Hello, welcome to another amazing episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential, and together we can change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Chris Kneeland. Chris is the CEO of Coke Collective, one of North America's premier engagement marketing firms. Chris has held marketing roles at world headquarters of John Deere's and Home Depot. He's consulted with Harley-Davidson, Best Buy, H-E-B grocery stores, United Way, and dozens of other brands. On today's podcast, Chris discussed how the iconic companies like ChickfilA, Under Armour, Beats by Dre, Yeti transform customers into communities. Please help me welcome Chris with Building Your Brand. Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
My name is Chris Kneeland. I'm currently the CEO of a marketing advisory firm that has offices throughout North America. We call ourselves Coke Collective. Admittedly, that's a bit of a provocative name, but it really speaks to our particular niche, is that we're not as interested in helping businesses get customers as much as we are interested in helping convert customers into cult-like followers. We're kind of fascinated by businesses that have transcended ordinary, rational relationships, and they have people that are freaks about their brand. In the 80s in Texas, which was just the king of big hair, particularly for girls. You could Google big hair, Texas 80s, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And so I had 4 sisters at home, and they would 2-fist hairspray to get their hair to stand up. And as a kid, I can still to this day, when I taste hairspray in the air, it takes me back to this trauma of my childhood. I was the only boy with 4 sisters in one bathroom that we all shared. And so I invented a product called Rock Hard Hairspray, which is essentially like Gorilla Glue in a bottle.
Wow.
And it would make like single-use application where your hair wouldn't move. And I invented a commercial where I storyboarded like a woman jumping off of a diving board into a pool and then coming up with perfectly unmessed up hair, or in a windstorm with the umbrella flies back, but the hair stays perfectly still. And it got a nice reaction from my classmates. And I remember thinking, that feels good. It feels good to create something that evokes an emotion, in that case, humor. And so I thought that I might go into copywriting. Went to school for copywriting. Realized copywriters don't make a lot of money, or at least entry-level copywriters don't. So I went more into the business side of advertising, which was more like account management, and kind of the rest is history.
That is awesome. So you've been into marketing pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah.
You talked about being a CEO of Coke Collective. What inspired you to begin that journey, and why?
Well, I have come to the conclusion that there's really 2 types of entrepreneurs. One I respect, kind of label unemployable, people that just don't do well in the structure of somebody else's construct. And that might be school. They didn't like college, or they didn't even go to college. They didn't do well in academics. Or maybe they just with like the idea of working for corporate America. I have a son who's that way. Like, if he has to imagine waking up every day at 8 a.m. to go sit behind a desk for 8 or 9 hours, like, he would rather. And so it's like, no, there is an alternative path for people that are looking to have a non-traditional type of employment. Or there's entrepreneurs who are so disenfranchised by something that they just have to fix it, that they're compelled to correct a wrong or to provide the world with something that is missing. And so they invent a product or a service. And I fall into that second category. I was very disenfranchised with the state of traditional advertising. I'd been inside big companies that relied on ad agencies or advertising. I'd been inside advertising agencies, and I just saw that I thought something was glaringly broken about that model. I didn't see somebody correcting it to the degree that I thought needed to be corrected. So I almost, out of a sense of duty and obligation, said, well, then I guess I have to.
Mm.
and have gone on that journey ever since.
Wow. So what brokenness did you see in the advertisement arena?
Well, there's two things. One, there's a lot that's broken with the model that I'll spare you and your listeners for, but the way that ad agencies make money, I think, is can be unethical. But more importantly, it's the false belief that clients who come to them with really significant business problems and they attempt to solve those problems with creative storytelling,
Mhm.
and the belief that these are communications problems, when in reality it's often has nothing to do with communications. There's a lot of very mediocre businesses that have exceptional advertising, and that's keeping them afloat. But the reality is most businesses need different prescriptions than a better ad or a better website. They need to get better customer experience, better pricing, better distribution, better product features. They need to actually fix the business. And I think that it's a bit disingenuous when the easy thing, it's kind of like losing weight. Like the easiest thing in the world, but just take a pill and you're somehow going to shed the pounds.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that sell quick weight loss pills.
Mm.
And I think of them as snake oil salesmen.
Mm.
Versus, no, you got to get your butt up every day and you got to go to the gym for an hour and you got to stop eating donuts and you need to, eat one serving, not two, and control your calories. And that's hard. And a lot of people don't want to do the hard work of actually getting fit or staying healthy. And so I think, to put it bluntly, I think advertising is selling a lot of, not all, I don't want to do anything in blanket statements, but a lot of ad agencies are telling clients what they want to hear, which is, yeah, just take some more of these pills and you're going to get healthy. And I think what clients really need is like a personal trainer that's going to say, no, we got a journey ahead of us here, and it's not going to be fun, but it's going to be effective.
I want to go here. So, as far as your experience, what are some common mistakes that startups make when it comes to marketing and advertising?
The most startup founders that we've interacted with suffer from field of dreamism. That's a condition that we've labeled from the movie Field of Dreams, where if you build it, they will come. And they spend all of their intellectual capacity, all of their time, most of their capital creating something, believing that its sheer existence is going to attract a crowd.
Mm.
And it doesn't. And that's where marketing needs to kind of be built in from the beginning. What about this is going to generate buzz? What about this can be even more novel? I heard a great podcast with Elon Musk, and he was saying the biggest problem with most entrepreneurs is that their solutions are only incrementally better.
Wow.
And that what we need are things that are revolutionary, not evolutionary. So if it's just going to be 10 or 20% better, you're setting yourself up for a long, hard road.
Mm.
Versus if it could be 50 to 100% better, but through the merits of the product or service is going to attract its own following and create its own fans. You look at Tesla, spends no money on traditional advertising, and yet it's valued more than all the automotive companies combined. But it wasn't just a better Prius. The Tesla was like a spaceship compared to the cars that we've been driving around in today. And so that's an example of, and Seth Godin kind of invented this years ago with a purple cow. And this, we don't spend enough energy truly being remarkable. We spend too much calories being slightly better. I don't think the world needs, at least first world countries don't need slightly better than. We have too much choice as is.
We're talking about, you mentioned Tesla, Apple, Harley Davidson, of course. How most of these icon brands in the world achieved their success and adoration?
So that was our question. I mean, what you're asking is what we sat around, and this was 13 years ago.
Mhm.
Two things happened that changed the trajectory of my career. First was I was working for a retailer who had launched a new line of women athletic wear, and our challenge was simple: steal market share from Lululemon. And we have a product that's just as good, if not better. We have a price point that's 30% less. We have an advertising budget that's tens of millions more because Lululemon wasn't spending money on advertising. And we couldn't convert any of them. Like, we were like, what the hell is going on here? Why are these women so freakishly loyal to Lululemon? And so it was this butting up against a cult brand and realizing, holy smokes, these people are playing a different, they're playing chess and I'm playing checkers. Like they're just playing a different game. And then we started working with Harley Davidson, and we got to look kind of under the hood and realize what is it about this brand, about how they think and what they believe and how they behave that has resulted in such fandom. And it was another one of those, holy crap, none of our other clients believe this. None of our other clients behave this way. And yet none of them have achieved the level of iconic, loyalty that Harley Davidson has had. And so it was those two experiences in back-to-back order that made us open our minds to say, is there a better way? Maybe what I learned in grad school or what I've seen from most businesses is not the best way forward. It's the most popular, but not necessarily the most effective. And so that's what led us to write our book and to create this event that we call The Gathering, where literally these brands just come and tell us, I don't think that, I think this. I don't do that, I do this. And if you get enough of them, I remember the first year we had the city of Las Vegas. How does the city of Las Vegas become the #1 tourist destination in America? We're fascinated by that, particularly when it's such a provocative, controversial concept. It's like adult debauchery, right? Like it's such an interesting idea. How does Red Bull start to become the king of energy drinks when it kind of tastes like crap? But it's like we're fascinated. If it's not about the flavor, what are they doing that makes them different? There's a team here in Canada called the Saskatchewan Roughriders, a small little Canadian football league team that is sort of like in the States, maybe the Green Bay Packers, where it's kind of community owned, irrational loyalty for that team. They sell more merchandise per capita than any other sports team in America. Even the Dallas Cowboys went to Saskatchewan to understand, what are you doing that make your fans so incredibly loyal? And so our research kind of went into that. We just started to study dozens and dozens of what are they doing? And we boiled it down to 8 specific areas. And we obviously don't have time to get into all 8, but it is knowable. It is replicatable. And really all that's missing is either the courage or the ambition or the know-how to apply those principles to any business. When I hear the word community, one of the first brands I think of is a great Texas brand called Yeti. And, Yeti, when they started, it was an expensive premium, cooler. And it wasn't like twice as expensive as the alternative. It was like 4 times as expensive. It's like $400, I think, at the time. Most of us were walking around with $40, igloos, or maybe a nice cooler being $120 that you splurge on at Target or something like that. And then here they come out with this $400. What are you talking about? But the reason why they were able to do that was that they understood their community better than most. And they've avoided the temptation as they've gotten bigger from just focusing on what happens in most businesses, channels. You go from focusing on your product to focusing on channels like email or search or social or my website or my store. And you start building teams around the management of those channels. And what's lost in that is the community, the customer. Like who's managing, Yeti has gone from, started with really hardcore fishing, and then it expanded into hunting and camping. And then it got into weird things like rodeo and snowboarding and surfing. And the whole way that they've gotten into these communities, and it's kind of taking a page out of GoPro, because GoPro did the same thing, was that we're going to go into those communities to add value. And we're not just going to go in there to sell stuff, because we don't have any credibility within those communities. Yeti will invest 3 years within a community to understand it, to know who the players are, to know what the needs are, to know what the customers are talking about. So by the time they decide we're now going to introduce a product into that community, they've got the street cred to do so. And I think a lot of particularly small businesses, they spend time either on product marketing or on channel marketing. And it's like, well, where's your community manager? And I don't mean like the person managing your Facebook fans. I mean like literally the people that are understanding what your target audiences are thinking, feeling, doing on a day-to-day basis.
Wow. But I just pulled 3 things out of what you just said. And the 3 things I have is find your community, know your community, and know what your community needs.
Unmet needs. And then if I was to add a fourth, satisfy the unmet needs that are best aligned with your core value proposition, right? So, Yeti can create camping chairs and tumblers and, things that deal with hardware. It would be weird if Yeti was to get into, creating a 4x4 truck or an ATV. Like, you got to kind of stay within the lane of what your core competence is, because we see that too. There are brands that have gone too far, even Carhartt, which I think is a wonderful cult brand that has understood its community. There was a time that they thought, should we make, automobile, a truck for this group? And that was going too far afield. You see that sometimes with Rolex trying to take this wonderful brand image, but then they extend beyond watches. It's like, that's not, I don't need Rolex luggage, right? That's too far afield. So that fourth part is use the filter of your unique abilities and your core brand attributes to say, what elements of that community can we enhance with the things that we do best?
Wow, awesome. How's the world best brands building from the inside out?
Well, I mean, that's it. So of the 8 principles, I think that was the one that I've learned the most about, because I wasn't expecting to stumble upon the correlation between human resource practices and culture with external engagement. But there's this high correlation. If you every year there's these different rankings of like some of the best places to work, and like Google always wins, number one kind of a thing. And I just, some of our work with Airbnb that made me realize that really great marketing begins with getting your employees sufficiently lathered up and excited about what you're doing. And if you can't convert the people that you're paying to believe in what you're doing, you don't really have much of a prayer of converting the outside world. And if you do convert your employees, then they become evangelists. And now you have a twofer. Now you have an employee who's more and more willing to go above and beyond, and they'll talk about you at cocktail parties and get their soccer coach or get their sister or their mother-in-law to buy your product. And so the company that to this day still gets all the credit is Zappos, and we had a chance to work with Zappos for several years. And you figure they've got nothing. They don't have a store. They're not selling anything proprietary. They don't ever go on sale. They don't hardly advertise other than keyword marketing. And so it's like, why is Zappos a $3 billion success story? It doesn't make any sense. They don't have any secret sauce except for their customer care. And customer care in most companies is sort of this entry level necessary evil function. And Zappos says, no, that's the delivery of our core brand value promise. And so we're going to make sure that our customer care representatives are the personification of our culture, of our values, of our brand. And they get tens of thousands of applications for a few hundred positions. I mean, it's people like are auditioning as if they were going on American Idol. They're sending in love letters and magic tricks and songs. You can see some of this on YouTube or Google. Like the things that people do just begging to work at Zappos gives them sustainable competitive advantage because of this investment that they've made where they just attract remarkable human beings.
I want to do something. I want to have a little fun if you're up to it. I want to do some lightning rounds if you're up to it.
Sure.
I'm listening to you, man. You equip and knowledge after knowledge. And I want to do this because I want to start with right over your head. Over your head, you have some nice, beautiful headphones. So I want to do this, just kind of talking a little bit about Beats. What did they get right into where they are right now?
It's funny you picked that. It's one of my favorite stories of all time because Noel Lee invented a better headphone. Noel Lee was an audiophile. He's basically a sound freak, and he's an engineer, and he created a headphone that improved the audio quality, better sound in a smaller space. That's the ultimate goal for headphones, right? And he marketed them under the banner of Monster headphones, and they were at best a modest success. They were way too expensive for what most people were thinking about, and he did a horrible job marketing them because he wanted to talk about the audio quality. He wanted to talk about what he did that made those speakers so superior. And only other audio nerds about what Noel had accomplished.
Wow.
Johnny Levine, a music industry mogul, said, listen, you have a better mousetrap. You have made a better headphone, but you suck at marketing. I'm going to take your product, I'm going to repackage it into this, what nobody had at the time, which was these red headphones. I'm going to give away a bunch at the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver, where people could see, like, what is Michael Phelps wearing on his head right there? And most importantly, I'm going to rebrand it. And we're going to partner with Dr. Dre, and who understands music. We're going to embrace this rap culture, a little bit more street. And we're going to, with no improvement to the quality of the headphones, he took something that was $200 or $300 million and made it to where Apple paid him $3 billion for the privilege of associating with that brand. And that is a cult brand principle called be relatable, which is people want to associate with people that they want to hang out with. And so brands have to become like one of those people. It's why Harley Davidson became the outlaw, and Lululemon has become sort of the hot yoga girl, and Gatorade has become Michael Jordan, right? Or Nike. And so it's a proven playbook. You actually can Google the story. It's actually kind of sad because Noel Lee did not get as much of the spoils as Johnny Iovine did. But it's like, well, who did the harder of the two things? Noel made a better mousetrap, but Johnny made the world want it and crave it and pay twice as much as all the other, competitive alternatives for it. And it was using multiple aspects of the cult brand playbook, but one in particular, which is relatability, and what he did with Dr. Dre.
And this is fun. That is really good. I want to do a couple of more if you're okay with that.
Sure.
All right, so the next place I want to do, because you mentioned, so we talked about Dr. Dre with Beats, and we talked about the Beats. I want to talk about Under Armour. Let's talk about that one.
Well, so Under Armour is one of my personal top 10 favorite cult brands. Under Armour did something quite brilliant, and for many years, all Under Armour was a tight T-shirt, right? I mean, now Under Armour was not any sort of threat to the Nikes of the world, because they simply invented a workout shirt that was moisture wicking and frankly flattering if you're in shape. Yeah. One of their big breaks was Any Given Sunday, when they got some product placement into that movie, and Jamie Lee Foxx's character walked around in Under Armour, and he was ripped, and people were like, what the hell is that guy wearing? Because I'm wearing kind of a baggy Fruit of the Loom white T-shirt. It's kind of like like what Saks has done with underwear. It's like, do you want to wear your dad's tighty whities, or do you want to wear something a little bit more modern? So but what Kevin Plank did that I think was so brilliant was, at the time, Nike and Reebok were sort of fighting for dominance of the professional athlete. So you were seeing these extreme sponsorship deals with the Michael Jordans and Kobe Bryants of the world, and these hyper aspirational sort of players. And Under Armour didn't have the resources to play in that space. And so they went after the everyday hero. They went after the high school locker room, the Division II schools or Div 1 universities that weren't, the top 10. They weren't Michigan State or Ohio State. And they were like, let's build this from the ground up with just, the CrossFit community, which didn't exist at the time. But, that kind of Ironman, I just want to be fit. And I'm never going to be a professional. And it wasn't until they did make billions of dollars that they kind of got into that, and they got into footwear and other lines of apparel and whatnot. But there's a principle, one of the 8 cult brand principles is called pick a fight. And it's like, some people really stress out about knowing what they truly stand for, but you equally need to know, what are you fighting against? And Kevin Plank sort of had this chip on his shoulder that was the anti-Nike. The rumor is, I haven't been to their campus in Baltimore, but that Kevin Plank's house has a Sherman tank that he bought, and it's aimed towards Nike's headquarters.
Oh, man.
And it's kind of like his personal reminder every day that I exist to take down that company. And I don't know why the chip on the shoulder exists, but he wanted to become the #1 athletic and apparel brand in the world, which meant you have to dethrone the king. And so it's a wonderful sort of reminder. Everybody should have that sense of both urgency and antagonistic attitude towards the existing incumbents because they want to be the insurgent that throws them down.
Wow. All right. So we did Beats headphones. We did apparel. I want to do one more. I want to go to everyday grocery store. Let's do HEB.
Boy, you're so good at picking, Cedric. So I consider one of my professional highlights working on the HEB business for a few years. When I was in Dallas, Texas, they hired us they hired my agency. What a truly remarkable brand. And what's unfortunate is as I've traveled the country or traveled the world, people in food and beverage put HEB on a pedestal, but a lot of other people don't know who they are because it's very regional. I mean, it's basically Texas and a little bit of Mexico.
Yeah.
So unless you've had a chance to experience it, you might inappropriately say, oh, you mean like Kroger? Or you mean like Wegmans? Or you mean like Publix? Because like every region has their own grocery chain. I'm like, well, not really. I think HEB is, many Texans have said HEB, or they have a premium brand called Central Market, is one of their favorite stores. I've seen that a little bit with Whole Foods. I've seen it a little bit with Trader Joe's, but rarely has grocery transcended because most grocery is very functional. Mm-hmm. But HEB is experiential. HEB leans into Texas, the variety of hot sauces that they're catering to the Latino community is very knowledgeable about who their audience is. One of my favorite things is HEB is so philanthropic in terms of their community giving, and when there's natural disasters, then the things that they do to just stand shoulder to shoulder. I mean, there's a lot of people that would say HEB, kept us fed when the power went out. HEB helped us, recover when the floods came or the hurricanes came or whatever it might be. That's not required. They don't do that because they have to. They do that because it's the ethos of the organization, and it helps that they're privately held. I do think that many of the best cult brands aren't publicly traded because I think Wall Street can ruin more companies than it can help. So it speaks to the ethos of their philanthropic founder. It speaks to the quality of people that he hires on their leadership team. And I have a huge crush on the HEB brand. And my biggest regret is that most Americans don't know it because it just exists in Texas.
Chris, I said 3, but I want to do one more. I hope I can hit 4 in a row on this.
We'll see. You're putting your record in jeopardy here.
I want to shoot for ChickfilA.
Boy, 4 for 4.
Oh, yes.
Listen, ChickfilA to me is the one that got away because every year we evaluate the world's most cult-like brands, and it requires a certain amount of reciprocity where they give us access to information and stakeholders so that we can properly evaluate them. So I had the privilege of flying to Atlanta, driving on to their palatial campus, which was just spectacular, and interviewing their CMO. I mean, Chick-fil-A is a very controversial brand because of their stance on LGBTQ issues. And again, I think they would say we're not anti-LGBTQ. I think they're just very pro-Christian and pro-family. Right. They are a weird success story. I mean, a really good quick serve restaurant, like a Subway, for example, or McDonald's. Maybe, and actually I know less about those two brands, but maybe take a smaller, like a Quiznos or a more regional one. Like if you're a franchisee that could get your store to do $1 million a year, you're in the top 10%. Like that would be a very successful small independent restaurant chain. The average Chick-fil-A does $3 million a year. So it's 3 times. The average is 3 times more successful than the industry average, and that's with only getting sales on 6 days a week because they're closed on Sunday.
Yes.
So they are in their own league in terms of their success, and they are a very values-driven business. Like you can very easily kind of decide, am I part of that fit or not? They have very interesting operating models about how they attract and retain their franchisees. It's very different than all the other franchisees, which I think is another interesting truth for your listeners, Cedric, is like stop trying to copy what the other people have done. I mean, one of my favorite cult brands is Costco. Costco did not copy any retail model. I mean, Costco charges you for walking into their store. They don't have the same merchandise week after week. It's essentially a warehouse with pathetic customer service, in the aisles. They accuse you of stealing when you walk out the door. They have bankers hours. Like, you can't go to Costco at night when you want to because they're closed early. Like, you're just like, what are you doing, Costco? You've given me 8 reasons to not want to shop you, and yet I love you. And I want to go there all the time. And I think Costco getting rid of their samples during the pandemic is one of the top 3 worst things that happened to me during COVID. Was I just couldn't go hang out and get my samples at Costco. So I think that Chick-fil-A was not interested in trying to create a normal quick serve restaurant experience. And they've reaped tremendous benefits for their adherence to they just marched to a different drummer. I think every business owner needs to have a very honest conversation with themselves about what do they really want to accomplish. Don't let somebody else like me talk you into the right answer, but do your own gut check, determine what your own ego, determine what your own resources are, determine what sort of legacy you're trying to leave. But to me, you have to hit this fork in the road. Going left means I am going to create a great company. I'm going to wake up every day and try to make a successful business that can provide nicely for my family and for my employees and can improve the category in which I compete. That's noble, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the steps and the playbooks that you follow to build a great company are well documented. Or you can go right, which is to say, I'm going to create a cult brand. Now, you may not use that language, but it's like, I'm going to try to make a difference. No. I'm going to try to change the way that people think or behave. I'm going to try to make an impact on the world in a way that's different than just my own financial success or the growth of my shareholders. Because cult brands exist to do something more significant than just produce financial returns. They do produce financial returns. They're some of the most successful businesses in the world, but that financial success is a means to a bigger end. Now, in some cases, that end is really noble, like Patagonia. They literally want to preserve the natural spaces on the planet. In other cases, it's less noble, like another great Texas brand, Southwest Airlines. They're not making the planet better. They just said, I want the average family to be able to enjoy the benefits of air travel. So we're freedom fighters, and we've democratized the skies, and we're about providing, their villain, their bad guy was the family station wagon. Like, I don't think you need to waste a day getting to grandma's house. If I can fly you there, because you got to imagine in the 70s when Southwest was birthed, flight was still kind of elitist. It was for the upper middle class. It was kind of, you'd get dressed up to go on the plane, and Southwest changed that whole paradigm to say this is like a glorified bus or a subway where we can just get you to one place or the other. So it really speaks to the ambition of the leader to say, how bold, how important, how impactful am I really trying to be? And each of them have very distinct playbooks. So where people get mistaken is if they think they want to build a cult brand because it sounds better, but they really don't. So they're not willing to invest in or do the playbook that cult brands do. Or they want to be a cult brand, but they're using the traditional company brand playbook, and they're abusing these tactics, and they're overusing, a reliance on mass media or markdowns and all the things that cult brands don't do. So if the CEO or the founder could just make that simple binary decision, am I going left or am I going right? Then you just need to surround yourself with the people that know how to do left or right.
Chris, wow. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
You can certainly, I like to rant on a daily basis on LinkedIn, so they can just follow me on my LinkedIn profile. Our company is at cultideas.com, and a lot of this content and these 8 principles are available for free to learn more about there. And then I also would encourage them to check out cultgathering.com. The Gathering is this annual event where all these great brand stories are told. Wow. We just did it in April, but a lot of that content is still available online, and you can access previous years' sessions, but there's over 80 remarkable stories from these brands that have, made that decision to go right instead of go left, and what was their learning curve, what were their growing pains, and that's all available at that website.
On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us.
Man, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation.
And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.